It was a quiet Friday afternoon. The rain had just started to patter softly against the windows, casting the living room in a cool, dim light. Alex had the place to himself for the first time in weeks. His mom had taken a short weekend trip with friends, leaving him to manage the house alone. Not that he minded. The solitude suited him, giving him a rare moment to breathe without his mother's constant questions about his classes or career plans. Just as he was settling into the couch with a book, a familiar chime of the doorbell pulled him from his quiet refuge. He was surprised to find Aaron, his dad's friend, standing on the doorstep. Aaron's usual smile was warmer than he remembered, his dark, steady gaze taking in Alex with a slight nod. "Hey, Alex. Thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. Heard you'd be here alone this weekend." His voice was calm, reassuring in a way that always made Alex feel like a kid again. But now, at 22, he couldn't ignore the spark of something else in Aaron's presence. A maturity, an assuredness he was beginning to notice more. "Yeah, just keeping an eye on things," Alex replied, stepping aside to let him in. The sound of Aaron's boots against the wooden floor echoed softly as he moved toward the living room. The two settled on opposite ends of the couch. It felt like old times, watching games or chatting with his dad. But today, the conversation was different. They spoke about school, plans after graduation, and what Alex wanted out of life, but there was an undercurrent Alex hadn't expected, a subtle awareness of their age gap and the mystery that Aaron represented to him. Their conversations grew slower, more thoughtful, and at times Aaron's gaze would linger on Alex just a little longer than usual. It was in these quiet moments, in the exchange of glances that Alex couldn't quite decipher, that he felt something shift between them, a shared tension neither acknowledged but both felt. As the evening wore on, the air between them grew denser, charged with something unspoken. The rain outside continued to fall, its steady rhythm punctuating the silence that would occasionally settle between them. Alex found himself glancing at Aaron, noticing the subtle lines in his face, the way his eyes held a warmth that felt both inviting and disarming. Aaron shifted closer on the couch, just a few inches, but enough that Alex felt the shift immediately. The conversation drifted from career plans to shared memories, stories about Alex's dad, and then gradually to more personal things, dreams and desires that Alex had never really shared with anyone before. "So," Aaron said softly, his gaze steady on Alex, "do you ever feel like you're following someone else's path?" Alex swallowed, caught off guard. "Yeah, sometimes. I guess that's normal, especially with my parents always having these ideas of what I should be doing. But—" He trailed off, feeling a strange mix of vulnerability and curiosity in Aaron's presence. Aaron nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. "It is normal," he said, his voice low, almost intimate. "But it's not everything. Sometimes you have to take a step in a direction that feels a little unknown." There was a silence, heavier than before. Alex felt his heartbeat just a little faster, his eyes caught by Aaron's, unable to look away. He could feel the warmth radiating from where Aaron sat, close enough that their arms nearly brushed. Aaron's hand reached over, a slow, careful movement, and rested on Alex's shoulder. It was a light touch, but the weight of it, the unexpected warmth, sent a shiver down his spine. Alex looked up, meeting Aaron's gaze, seeing something in his eyes that he hadn't noticed before. A quiet intensity, a calm, steady resolve. Without a word, Aaron's thumb gently grazed Alex's shoulder, a small, comforting gesture that felt more significant than he could put into words. Alex felt himself leaning slightly into the touch, his breath catching as the tension between them grew, as if they were both on the edge of something they didn't quite understand. Aaron's hand lingered on Alex's shoulder, grounding yet electric. The room felt smaller, the rain outside now a soft murmur. Alex could barely breathe, his heart pounding, and he struggled to understand the swirl of emotions he was feeling. Aaron's gaze hadn't left him, searching perhaps for a sign or maybe an answer to a question neither of them had voiced. With a soft, almost cautious smile, Aaron's hand slipped from Alex's shoulder, only to rest gently on his hand. Alex's pulse quickened as he looked down at their fingers, feeling warmth radiate through his skin, his own hand reacting instinctively, brushing slightly against Aaron's. This contact was tentative, filled with a kind of tension Alex had never felt before, an invitation waiting to be accepted or turned away. "Alex." Aaron's voice was barely above a whisper, rough around the edges with something unspoken, yet patient. Alex met Aaron's eyes, trying to find words, but nothing came. The intensity of Aaron's gaze was disarming, reaching into places Alex had kept closed off for so long. He didn't know what to say, didn't even know what he wanted or needed, but he knew he didn't want Aaron to move away. Seconds passed like hours, each one thick with the quiet, growing understanding of their connection. Aaron's thumb brushed across Alex's knuckles, slow and reassuring, his eyes watching him, reading the nervous yet curious expression on his face. Finally, unable to contain his emotions any longer, Alex took a slow, deep breath, his fingers instinctively curling around Aaron's, accepting the silent invitation. Aaron's hand tightened slightly, a comforting weight, and Alex felt a shiver of relief. In that quiet moment, they had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Neither of them moved, allowing the depth of the moment to sink in, the rain a gentle backdrop to the new and overwhelming reality they were both just beginning to understand. Alex's heart raced as he held Aaron's hand, feeling an unspoken promise in the warmth of his touch. Their eyes met, and for a moment it was as though the rest of the world had faded away, leaving only the quiet electricity between them. Alex's breathing was shallow, a mixture of anticipation and nervousness building within him, every second feeling like an eternity. Aaron leaned slightly closer, his gaze dropping briefly to Alex's lips before flicking back up to his eyes. Alex's pulse quickened, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and desire. He had never imagined being in this situation, never thought he'd feel this way with anyone, let alone Aaron. But here they were. An invisible line crossed, and he didn't want to step back. Breaking the silence, Aaron spoke, his voice low and soft. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable, Alex. We can stop any time." The sincerity in his tone steadied Alex, grounding him, and he realized he didn't want to stop. Alex gave a slight shake of his head. "I'm okay, I think." He could barely get the words out, his voice trembling, but he knew he meant them. The vulnerability of his own response startled him, yet there was an unmistakable relief in saying it aloud. Aaron's lips curved into a gentle smile, understanding without words. Then, with a patience Alex hadn't expected, Aaron lifted his hand and brushed a stray lock of hair from Alex's face, his fingers grazing his cheek in a touch that sent a shiver down his spine. It was such a simple gesture, but it held the weight of 1,000 unspoken feelings. The moment stretched on as Aaron's hand rested on Alex's cheek, his thumb gently brushing the skin just below his eye. Alex closed his eyes, surrendering to the feeling, letting the warmth of Aaron's presence melt away his hesitation. Slowly, almost instinctively, he leaned forward, feeling Aaron's breath against his skin, the tension between them reaching a crescendo that neither could deny. Just as their lips met, tentative and searching, the outside world dissolved completely, leaving only the two of them, caught in a moment that neither wanted to end. Their kiss was soft, hesitant, filled with the weight of uncertainty and the thrill of something entirely new. Alex felt a warmth spread through him, a quiet intensity that left him breathless and anchored him in the moment. Aaron's hand moved gently from Alex's cheek to the back of his neck, pulling him just a little closer, deepening the connection without rushing it. The gentleness of Aaron's touch made Alex's heart ache in ways he hadn't known possible. When they finally pulled apart, both men were quiet, the only sounds in the room being their breaths and the rain's steady patter outside. Alex kept his eyes lowered, feeling a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension as he tried to process what had just happened. But before he could lose himself in second thoughts, Aaron's hand remained steady on the back of his neck, grounding him. "Alex," Aaron murmured, his voice low and sincere, "we don't have to figure it all out tonight. Let's just be here. Right now." Alex looked up, meeting Aaron's eyes, feeling a rush of gratitude for the calm in his voice. He nodded, his apprehension fading slightly as he took in Aaron's reassuring expression. They sat there in silence, the closeness between them no longer charged with tension, but with an understanding, a mutual willingness to explore whatever this was, no matter how uncertain it felt. After a few quiet minutes, Alex leaned back, his head resting on the couch as he let out a long, relieved breath. Aaron settled beside him, his arm resting comfortably along the back of the couch, their fingers still intertwined. They stayed that way, wrapped in the quiet intimacy of shared space and unspoken promises, each glance and touch deepening the connection they had just begun to explore. In that moment, Alex knew his life had taken a turn he could never have anticipated, but one he was finally ready to embrace. As they sat together in the stillness, Alex felt his earlier tension begin to dissolve. For so long he'd kept this part of himself buried, hidden even from himself, yet here with Aaron, it felt as if he could let down every barrier. The warmth of Aaron's presence beside him was both comforting and exhilarating, each quiet breath between them drawing him in closer to emotions he was just beginning to understand. Aaron's fingers tightened slightly around Alex's, a gesture that conveyed his steady reassurance. Alex dared to glance up, catching the way Aaron's eyes softened, his gaze holding an unspoken question. Feeling bold, Alex returned the look, letting himself lean into the newness of this connection, a mixture of curiosity and longing that left his chest tight with anticipation. The silence stretched on, becoming a language of its own, until Aaron spoke, his voice soft but resonant. "Alex, I know this is a lot, more than either of us probably expected. I just need you to know, whatever we decide, I'll be here. I'll be patient." His words were both an invitation and a promise, and they filled Alex with a quiet sense of relief. For a moment, he struggled to find a response, his throat tightening with gratitude. I think I've been waiting for someone to say that for a long time," Alex murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent so long trying to figure everything out, never letting anyone get close." His cheeks flushed as he spoke, the vulnerability almost too much, but the gentle look in Aaron's eyes urged him on. "But with you, I don't feel like I have to hide anymore." Aaron nodded, his thumb gently brushing over Alex's knuckles in a comforting rhythm. "You don't, Alex. You never have to with me." As the words hung in the air, Aaron's free hand moved to rest on Alex's shoulder, a quiet, grounding touch. They sat there, side by side, allowing themselves to be fully present in the moment. Aaron's closeness and his gentle reassurances filled Alex with a sense of peace he hadn't known was possible. The hours drifted by, the rain outside slowing to a soft drizzle, and with each passing minute, Alex felt himself sinking deeper into the quiet warmth between them. At last, Aaron shifted, leaning forward to press a soft kiss to Alex's forehead, a gesture that spoke of patience and understanding. "Whenever you're ready," Aaron whispered, his voice a gentle murmur. "We'll go at your pace." Alex felt his heart swell, and as he closed his eyes he let himself finally, fully relax, trusting in the steady presence beside him. In that simple, intimate silence, they found a new beginning neither had been expecting. The soft intimacy between them lingered, settling deeply into the quiet of the room. Alex felt like he was breathing easier than he had in months, maybe years. Aaron's arm draped casually around his shoulder, a gentle weight that offered more comfort than any words could. It was like he'd found a place where he didn't need to explain himself, a place he could simply be. After a few more moments, Aaron spoke, his voice low and soothing. "You know, Alex, sometimes the most unexpected things can bring clarity. The world gets so noisy, it's easy to miss the things that matter most." He paused, his hand tracing gentle circles on Alex's shoulder. "I think that's why I'm here with you right now." Alex felt a lump rise in his throat, his emotions raw and close to the surface. "I think I know what you mean," he said softly. He could barely meet Aaron's eyes, afraid his own gaze would give away just how deeply he was feeling all of this, but Aaron's steady, warm presence made him feel safe enough to let down his guard. Aaron's hand moved from his shoulder, resting instead on his back in a gentle, reassuring gesture. It was as if he sensed Alex's vulnerability, and he didn't want to push him. They sat like that, wrapped in the comfort of shared silence, each heartbeat marking the passage of time, drawing them closer together in a bond that words alone couldn't convey. Eventually, Aaron broke the silence, his voice a gentle murmur. "We don't have to know where this is going, Alex. Not tonight, not tomorrow. Just let it be what it is, without pressure. We can take this one step at a time." Hearing this, Alex felt the last remnants of his reservations begin to melt away. He turned to Aaron, meeting his gaze with a sense of openness and trust he hadn't felt before. Slowly, he reached out, resting his hand on Aaron's, letting his fingers lace gently with his own. It was a small gesture, yet it felt like a promise, a quiet acknowledgement of the connection they'd begun to nurture. They stayed that way as the night wore on, their breaths settling into a shared rhythm, the unspoken understanding between them growing deeper. Whatever lay ahead, Alex knew he could face it with Aaron by his side, and that realization filled him with a newfound sense of hope and peace. As the hours passed, their quiet closeness blossomed into something that felt profound, a warmth that wrapped around Alex like a comforting blanket. The silence between them was no longer just the absence of words, but a presence in itself, a gentle understanding, unhurried and free from expectations. Aaron shifted slightly, his hand remaining on Alex's back, tracing small, absent-minded circles that sent shivers up his spine. The familiarity of the gesture surprised Alex, filling him with a mix of nervous excitement and contentment. He wanted to say something, anything to capture the complexity of his emotions, but words felt unnecessary in Aaron's presence. Instead, he leaned closer, allowing himself to melt into the quiet security he felt beside him. Aaron's voice broke the stillness, gentle and filled with an intimacy that Alex had come to treasure. "You know, I don't think I've felt this comfortable with someone in a long time. It's strange how things just happen, how some connections are just meant to be." He let out a soft chuckle, his hand moving to rest on Alex's shoulder. "I didn't see this coming, but I'm glad it did." Alex felt his chest tighten at Aaron's words, a surge of warmth spreading through him. "I am, too," he admitted, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I don't think I even knew I needed this until now. Being here, with you, it feels right." Aaron's hand slipped down to meet Alex's, their fingers intertwining once more in a gesture that felt as natural as breathing. Alex's heart pounded, but he didn't feel the urge to pull away. Instead, he leaned his head against Aaron's shoulder, letting himself sink into the calm, steady rhythm of their connection. As the rain outside tapered off, the room grew quieter still, leaving only the sound of their steady breathing. Alex knew that this was only the beginning, that there would be complexities and uncertainties ahead. But for now, he let himself be fully present, savoring the closeness and the quiet promise they shared. The future, with all its questions, could wait. They stayed that way, holding on to each other, both unwilling to let go as the first hints of dawn began to peek through the window.